All right, from fear to freedom, domestic violence and legal support and guidance is our focus for the next half hour. Kindness Dogara Arong is a distinguished corporate intellectual property lawyer and entrepreneur. And through her legal expertise and social media influence, she has educated and empowered so many entrepreneurs and equipped them with knowledge that is needed to protect their businesses and navigate the legal landscape. John.
Yes, and of course, beyond her work as a lawyer, Kindness is a passionate human rights advocate, actively speaking out against gender-based violence, child abuse, and social justice. Today, Kindness joins us to discuss a topic which resonates with countless individuals in a conversation titled Domestic Violence and Legal Support and Guidance. Kindness, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Perfect. So nice to have you on the show with us.
Nice to have you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so domestic violence is often seen as a private matter. Why do you think that many victims hesitate to seek legal help?
Okay, I'll see from different angles. Many victims hesitate to seek legal help because in our own country, there's little or no knowledge about our rights. Like a lot of people who are going through domestic violence are not even aware that they are being wronged. They are not aware that someone is hurting them. It's just like you grew up seeing these things, like especially women in our society, you grew up seeing these things as the norm. You complain to someone around you and everyone is saying, oh, don't worry, marriage, pray about it, it will be fine, it's marriage, enjoy it. So you cannot seek for help when you don't even know you're in trouble, right? So most times they are not seeking for help because they don't come to the realization that they are in trouble or someone is hurting them or this thing that is being done to you is against the law, is wrong. So you're only going to seek for help when you know that you're being wronged. And secondly, some people don't seek for help because even though they know they're being wronged, they do not know where to go to. Okay. So I'm being wronged, where do I go to? We already know some of our law enforcement agents, when you go there and say, oh, I don't want to mention names, but when you get there and say, okay, my husband beat me, they say, wait till you do all those kind of things. They'll be like, oh, maybe I've said so. That place you're going to is not even the safest place for you to go when you're going through things like this. And then thirdly, even when people know and they know they can go to somewhere, they are afraid of going out. The shame in called victims of violence and all that, and coming out in public to be shamed. And okay, this person is going through this, we like to keep ourselves to ourselves and hold it back. And because even when they come out in public to talk about it or go to seek help, a lot of times they get mocked, they get laughed at. I recently saw a video of a man talking about how his kids were abusing him, and everyone was laughing. Everyone was laughing, and it was why is everyone laughing? Simply because the person complaining about domestic violence is a man. So it's all those things, shame, the stigma that's going to be attached to it. And then finally, lack of funds. A lot of people who do not complain do not even have what it takes, and they are not aware that there are non-profit organizations and others who are going to be willing to help them if they are strong enough to come out and talk about them.
Yes,
I think that's what
I was actually coming to that because it would appear that with all you have said, you know, survivors of domestic violence would most of the time feel like they're on their own, OIO, like they say, on your own. So what would be the legal rights of domestic violence survivors in this country? And what protection does the law offer them?
Okay, there are so many, when we talk about victims of domestic violence, just like I said, it's not being aware is the issue most of the time. Let's start from there. There are so many laws. Let's start from the Nigerian Constitution. Section 34 of the Constitution provides against any form of intimidation or harm to persons. If you already know that that section is providing against you being tormented and every other thing, you can step out and go find a lawyer, even if you don't have money, right? To get a lawyer, you can meet non-profit organization, you can go to legal aid, at least take a step. Once you take a step, you are going to find help. There are so many laws. The penal code is there, the criminal code is there, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. In Lagos State, we have the Prohibition Against Violence laws of Lagos. In Ekiti State, we have them, Cross River. I think the Violence Against Persons Act is also implemented in Abuja, but some other states have taken it, like Anambra State, Kaduna State, and a host of others. You would not know these things if you do not step out. So, for again, under the Violence Against Persons Act, you have 3 years imprisonment for the person who has infringed on your right, and fines or both. So it's left for the victim to go ahead, seek for legal help. You cannot find help you're not looking for. If you go out, seek for help, depending on the jurisdiction where you are. If you are in Lagos, if you're in Abuja, if you're in Enugu, it's left for the lawyer or for the legal team, the non-profit, or whoever you found to guide you through the laws of your state that would help you come out of what you're going through. Because when it comes to domestic violence, every state, jurisdiction, and everything have different laws that they are using to protect victims. But until the victim themselves step out, you will not get help.
That's what we're going to take away today, apart from every other thing. The victims themselves must realize that they are being wronged, that it's not proper what they're going through, and they need to take a step of faith to find help. All right, so many victims fear retaliation. One of the things that probably would make them think twice about stepping out is retaliation from their abusers. What legal protections are in place at the moment to keep them safe?
Okay. I said again, there are several legal protections. They can seek a restricting order from the court. That's why you need a lawyer again to do that. You can go for a restraining order. You can file for judicial separation. Now, when you file for a restraining order, the court is going to make sure that the person who is perpetrating this act against you stays away from you as much as possible. So if there's that order of court making the person to stay away from you as much as possible, there is no retaliation that is going to come. So you come under the protection of the law. That is how you get that help. You go to the court, you can file for a restraining order. As a victim, like I said again, you still need a lawyer to put you through this. So that's one of the rights you have and remedies you have. If you are afraid of someone retaliating, you can file for a restraining order.
Okay, our discussion today is from fear to freedom.
Sure.
And that will indicate to us that it's not so much ignorance, right? But another key thing there is fear. Because some people, yes, they are so scared to even leave abusive relationships, for instance. What kind of support systems do we have legally and maybe socially in this country for individuals who are trying to escape abusive relationships?
Okay, I would say most of the support we have now is non-profit organizations and so much. But I'm going to bring in something I really like to point out. Most of the time, people are afraid because you're living an abusive marriage or an abusive home or an abusive partner to go and meet an abusive society. So it's not even about living person, it's about the people you're going to meet out there. Somebody is leaving one person that is abusing them to go meet a society of a whole lot of people that is out there to continue the abuse. And what do I mean by? So sometimes these fears, I wouldn't say are not justified, because you're leaving an abuser and you're going into a society where if you make a comment or you say something, people will be like, oh, look at that one, she left her home, all those kind of comments and everything. So in as much as the society think they are not contributing to these things, we are also abusing the victims. So the victims are afraid of leaving their abusive partner to come and meet us, the society, that are abusive to them. Because if they can't find a safe place to come to, There's no point going out. And so one of the things I'm going to say is we as a society should create a safe space for people who want to come out. Much more that non-profit organizations are doing a lot. We have a whole lot of them. What I do for victims is when you come, there's a human rights commission. We can go there, seek for help. Non-profit organizations like Safe Haven, like WebP, like Project Safe, there are a whole lot of them where you can get help, you can get shelter, you can get protected for a while you're seeking for judicial separation, restriction orders, and all that. But more important is the attitude of our society towards the people who are victims of domestic violence, who have decided to take that bold step to step aside. What are they going to meet in the society when they step outside? Are they going to leave an abusive partner to meet an abusive society? Or is the society going to embrace them and say, you know what, come home? There are victims. I have had victims who would not even go back to their parents because their parents are so archaic in their minds, and you come home and they say, no, you cannot fail, your marriage cannot fail, come home. So some of those fears are justifiable. Some of their fears are not unfounded. So if we're asking what are those things we can do to allay their fears, just beyond non-profit organization helping them, what are we doing as a family? If you have a child, a daughter, a nephew, a niece, who is a friend, who is a victim of domestic violence, what attitude do you give them when they leave? Do they leave and can they come to you when they leave? Can they rely on you when they are moving out? All these things are those things that even make them feel more
trapped.
Afraid.
Okay.
Where am I stepping? Am I stepping to a society that is going to accept me, or a society that is still going to bully me?
That's more hostile. Okay. All right then. Okay. So it's beyond the immediate family. You know, the society is even more important. According to your explanation. Now, let's move away from the victim and look at the perpetrators. Can an abusive spouse, for example, face criminal charges? And what penalties exist for perpetrators of domestic violence as we speak today in Nigeria?
Today in Nigeria, just like I said, different jurisdictions have different laws, but I'm going to be taking the Violence Against Persons Act, which is applicable here in Abuja. The Violence Against Persons Act provides for 3 years imprisonment or a fine of 200,000 or both, depending on the gravity of the case. So each jurisdiction have, I think in Akwa Ibom or Cross River, they have about 2 years imprisonment and 1 year, 100,000 naira and or both. So there are different jurisdictions and all that who have such things.
Did I hear 12,000 naira
100,000
in Abuja?
Okay.
Out there, it's not so good, right?
I mean, for 12,000 naira, you just continue beating up your spouse.
Imagine. And considering the length of, you know, the period of time that you go back and forth in court.
Go back and forth and all that. So that's why I think the society itself, we are not really creating something that makes the person who is the victim feel confident enough to step out. So we need to do more about our laws, about our regulations, about what we are doing. Because most of the time, I would say, most of the help coming for victims of domestic violence come from non-profit organizations. These are the places, but most of our laws, yes, they are there. But execution, it is one thing to have a law, it is another thing to actually execute these things. And when somebody abuses a partner and you say bring 200,000 naira, I mean
it's like it's like just a pat on the hand.
Hey, you understand? What is 200,000 naira compared to the emotional trauma, the physical neglect, everything the person is going through? So if we look at it critically, we are not having the right conversations we are supposed to have about the perpetrators. What are we going to do to them to make sure that they when you are about doing something like this and you realize that, okay, I'm committing a crime that is worth 200,000 naira? Because if you are saying 3 years imprisonment or 200,000 or
$1 million or 2 million, you know, something that the person will not be able to afford. And that's why we have cases of domestic violence everywhere. Acid, petrol, but someone setting his wife on fire, all kinds of unimaginable things are happening between people who once at a time said, I love you, and I want to take care of you. And all of a sudden, things are happening that we can't comprehend.
Sorry, before we leave, I want us to define this conversation a little bit more, because it appears as if we're concentrating on husbands and wives.
Yeah.
When we talk about domestic violence, it extends beyond the couple.
True.
For instance, house helps, people around
Yeah.
you in the same environment. So would the laws, for instance, be
The same?
different?
Okay.
Or do we
That's
have-
part of what
Yes.
you do. You also deal with child abuse.
Yes, like under the Violence Against Persons Act, we have all that covered, and also under the Protection Against Violence in Lagos State law, we also have all those things covered. So when we're talking, I was going to say that when we're talking about domestic violence, we're not restricting it to just hitting somebody physically. If you look closely at the act, you'll see domestic violence goes even beyond just physically beating somebody. It goes into economic deprivation, desertion, rape, and so much others. So even when somebody is under your roof, the way you treat them all comes to domestic violence. As long as the World Health Organization has defined domestic violence as any form of act done within a family that will put somebody in a situation where they are traumatized or feel threatened or frightened. So even with your home, your helps, you will see situations where people are using iron to press a house help. Somebody is using pepper. All those things. Violence. It's not only when someone slaps his wife or someone beats his wife that we're talking about domestic violence. Any act that traumatizes anybody living within your home is domestic violence. As long as that act is an act of torture, is a demeaning act, it is domestic violence.
Yeah.
All right,
And
this is something that I believe that we should be talking about on a daily basis. So we will have a part 2 of this conversation. But before you go, take a minute to give us a message. What message do you have for anybody who is watching this show right now and feels like they're trapped in an abusive situation, but do not know where to go or what to do? In a minute, please.
Okay, if you're a victim of domestic violence, one thing I'm going to say is you're not the problem and it's not your fault. There's always help for you. If you can't get help around you, seek for the next human rights commission around you. Find a lawyer, find legal aid. There's always help. Talk to your neighbors, talk to someone, and never be afraid to share your problem with anyone. There's always someone who is ready to help and who is ready to hear you. And once again, you are not the problem. The perpetrator is the problem.
Indeed. Domestic violence is not just a personal issue, it's a societal crisis that silences voices, it shatters lives, and destroys futures. So breaking this cycle begins with speaking up, standing strong, and refusing to normalize abuse. Thank you, Kindness, for being kind enough for opening our eyes to not only the ills, but the solutions to domestic violence in our society. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Kindness. You have professionally given us or guided us through the legal rights of victims, availability of resources, and how society can collectively work towards breaking the circle of abuse. We thank you immensely for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll be back to you later on a later date for the part 2 of this conversation. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 2 female advocates, one for stroke victims and the other against domestic violence, both with foundations and NGOs from where they make impact. Now, after the break, we engage the Chief Executive Officer of STEP Business Network. He is Michael Oladipo, I know. And what will he be talking about? Grants for NGOs and what they should know. Join us again.